welcome to GPFF Lives Online, to our conversation this afternoon with Dan Karslake, director of For They Know Not What They Do, and will a little later be joined by Coleen Porcher, who's in the film. I'm Nina Strike. I'm the executive director of the Global Peace Film Festival. Thank you for joining us. This is our fourth conversation on GPFF Lives Online, and you can see the other ones if you go to our Facebook page. They're all archived there, so I hope you'll check in with some of those. We're inviting filmmakers whose work we've shown in previous editions of the festival, and today we're delighted to be welcome to welcome Daniel Karslake, and as I said a little later, we'll be joined by Coleen Porcher, who's in For They Know Not What They Do. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Nina.
Hi, welcome. And Dan is joining us from Berlin.
Hello from Germany.
where it's much later than it is on the East Coast of the United States. So first of all, Dan, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the film, how you got the idea? Actually, it comes as a follow-up film to your 2007 film, For the Bible Tells Me So.
Yep.
And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me. The Global Peace Film Festival has had a huge role in almost all of my films, and you guys were our fiscal sponsor for They Know Not What They Do, which was really key for us. The movie wouldn't be made without money raised, and you've just been always been there for us.
Orlando's been delighted to be there for you.
Well, I very much appreciate it. Orlando has been hugely supportive of my work, especially this film. My beloved colleague, fellow producer, Sherry Heitker, lives in Orlando as well.
Dear
so
friend. Yes.
Yeah, so she's I miss her on this call. Anyway, it's great to be here. Yes,
I offered her to be on the call too, but she's
watching. Hi, Sherry.
Right. Yes, hi, Sherry.
Anyway, so you mentioned For the Bible Tells Me So. That movie premiered at Sundance in 2007. It's about 5 Christian families who find out they have a gay or lesbian child. Super proud of that movie. Didn't think I would make another one similar, honestly, because there are a lot of things I care about, a lot of issues that I'm very passionate about talking about and having a conversation about through my films. But in 2015, about a year after my husband and I had moved to Berlin, I started getting threatening emails again through the For the Bible Tells Me So website. When that movie first premiered, I got a number of death threats for about a year. The movie was very threatening to conservative Christians who had not seen it because they felt like it was probably bashing their religion and very negative about Christianity, which of course it's not at all. It's actually about Christian families and how they do or don't deal with this topic, but it's definitely not anti-religion or anti-Christian. Anyway, fast forward to 2015, and in August of 2015, I started getting these death threat-like emails again. And I was very confused by that. I talked to my husband about it and said, what's going on in the US right now that is empowering people to threaten me? And if they're threatening me because of a film that's almost 10 years old, what's happening in high schools and on playgrounds and bullying and all of that, what's going on in America? So we tuned in again to kind of the politics of what was happening in America at that time. And there was a Republican candidate debate for president. It was when all of the candidates were still in the race for the Republican nomination. And there were probably 10 candidates in that debate. And a good 8 of them said things that were proudly and unabashedly anti-gay and anti-trans. And that shocked me. Obviously, the Republican Party has not been the party in America that's embraced LGBTQ people, but usually there were sort of fringe people in the Republican Party that were bold enough to say some of the things that I heard at that debate, but this was 8 out of 10 of them. And that really worried me. I knew that marriage equality had come to America only a couple months before that. And it occurred to me that maybe this was some kind of backlash. So I just started reading about what was going on in the US at the state level. And when I started doing that, I got very alarmed when I looked at how there were more than 200 anti-gay and anti-trans bills being considered at the state level. And there was all this rising anti-trans rhetoric coming out of churches. And of course, I'm very, very interested in the religious discussion and the power of religion, both to do really amazing things and to do terrible damage. So after some thought, I thought about what we had left undone for the Bible. You know, we hadn't really looked at the transgender issue at all, which is felt to me like a big hole in that film ultimately. And the religious freedom movement in America was really growing since For the Bible was made. So I wanted to look at that. And I also wanted to take a look at conversion therapy, because conversion therapy to me is what leads to more suicides of LGBTQ people than anything else. It's an incredible infringement on the human rights of an LGBTQ person. So I wanted to look at that. So that's what made me decide to make the new film, For They Know Not What They Do.
So how did you find the people who you feature in the film?
I thought long and hard about what I wanted to accomplish and the stories that I wanted to tell. I knew that I wanted to find a conservative evangelical family because I felt like they needed to be in the movie so that people who are like them, who are most often the people who are not with us in our sort of pursuit of equality, I wanted to speak to them directly through some of their own people that speak their language. So I was looking for an evangelical couple, and I luckily came across an amazing couple called Linda and Rob Robertson in Seattle. A good friend of mine told me about them. They had just started talking publicly about their gay son, Ryan, and what had happened to him through conversion therapy, which, as I said, was another issue I wanted to address. So I went to Atlanta to a conference they were attending, and I met them there and just felt a real immediate simpatico, which was a big learning experience for me too, because I was expecting to have to sort of bite my tongue and kind of take their judgment, because I, as a gay man myself, I've experienced a great deal of judgment from evangelicals, and it's always relatively patronizing or definitely negative in some way. But I didn't feel that at all from Linda and Rob, even though they were still in their process. And I really, frankly, just sort of fell in love with them. So that's how I found them. Then I wanted, as I said, at least a couple trans stories, families with trans children. And I very quickly was talking to Gene Robinson, who's the first openly gay bishop in Christianity. He was one of the five stories, one of the five family stories, and For the Bible Tells Me So. And Gene has become a very dear friend. And I was in Washington working on something else, and I said to him, Gene, I think I'm going to make a second film, and I want it to include stories of trans families, religious families with trans kids. And he said, oh, there's a woman I work with. I just did her wedding. Her name is Sarah McBride. Come to work with me tomorrow. You can meet her. So I did, and I met her. And anyone who meets Sarah McBride knows immediately that she'll probably be the first trans president of the US. She is quite extraordinary. And then I needed to obviously meet her parents. This is the story. These movies are about family, and they're heavily about the parents, really almost more than the LGBTQ child, because my whole strategy is to try to reach the hearts and minds of parents who will have children who come out to them, to maybe give them a story so they remember what they've seen before they knee-jerk reject their child or do something even worse. So met Sarah, met her parents a few months later, fell in love with them, spent a good amount of time with them. So it was clear that they were in. Then I wanted a Latino story, a Latinx story, because that's another thing we missed in For the Bible. We didn't really talk a lot about Catholicism, and definitely not the Latinx community. So as I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time in Orlando, and I came across this beautiful family, the Baez-Fibo family. Vico, the son, who's just such a sweet, wonderful soul. had a really hard time coming out to his very macho Latino father. He thought literally his father might kill him if he found out he was gay. But when you see the film, it's a whole different experience that he has. So I was super, super grateful to meet him. The hardest family to find was a family of color with a trans child. This happened for the Bible. The last family I found was a Black family who had a gay child, has a lesbian child. And in this film too, I spoke to and got to know probably 20 different families of color who had trans kids. And it was just, I'm super white guy. And I think there were always some trust issues, which is completely understandable to me. I'm also an unknown, like a filmmaker. People often think all documentary filmmakers are Michael Moore. That's not me at all, but how would they know? These are very personal stories. So we literally got into editing the film in the last year, and I just was absolutely not going to finish this film without some kind of representation of the Black community in this film around the trans issue, because, as so many people know now, more Black trans people, especially Black trans women, are being murdered every year than the year before. It's just this horrifying epidemic. So it just was very important for me to find that family. And luckily, through a colleague of mine, I used to work on the senior staff of the Riverside Church in New York, and I was asking everyone in my life for 4 years, do you know any families who might be able to talk to me about this film? And John Vaughn told me about Coleen Porcher because he had worked with Coleen, and he put us in touch, and we started the conversation. And that conversation with the Porchers was sort of the quickest turnaround. Luckily, we had another conversation with Elliott, her son, and then with Harold, her ex-husband. So miraculously, they showed up right in the right time, because for me, they are absolutely the perfect fourth story in the movie.
And at this point, I've put up the IndieWire review that has a beautiful picture of the Porcher family. And as Dan told me earlier, he actually took this picture. So let's introduce Coleen at this point.
Yeah, so Coleen Porcher is one of these Renaissance women that does pretty much everything well. She's a nonprofit executive. She's a CEO and executive director of a nonprofit in New Jersey. They live in Montclair, New Jersey. And she is also hails originally from the Caribbean. And so brings all of that heritage, all of that history. She has become a very dear friend of mine. I feel very lucky to know and to talk to Coleen relatively often these days. It's a huge blessing for me. And then when you see the film, you'll understand sort of the strength of character that both of these parents have, but particularly Coleen, because she has a very strong faith. And it was, in a way, her faith that got her through this big transition that her child went through. So I give you Coleen Porcher.
Hi, Coleen. You're muted, Coleen.
Hi, everybody. Hi, out there in the world.
So first of all, I wanted to ask you what it was like, before we get into the more serious stuff, what it was like to agree to be in a documentary, opening up your heart and your family to the camera.
So that's an interesting question about what it was like, opening up. I didn't really know what I was doing, meaning that, it was like, life is often about relationships. And I think sort of, what I concluded, I'm going to start at the end to go back to the beginning, is that how we change lives and minds is through relationships. And so I'd worked with John Vaughn too. So that was where the relationship and the connection was, at a National Black Foundation and at a seminary. And so John knew the story, and he was also a source of his friendship and comfort when I was sort of struggling through just a number of different things, but just sort of this wise, kind person. And so he told me about that Daniel was doing this film, and I think it was synchronicity and faith. I do believe that it was like, I do think like, so God is in all these small things, because I was at a national conference around children. Like we're talking about children's developing minds. And, there was nothing at this conference about gender and sexuality and all of that. And so here it was, this person I'm meeting for the first time on Skype. I was, and so I talked to him in a hotel room, and, and I was in the middle of a divorce. We were just getting through to be at a good point, in a way with Elliott and the journey. And so I was feeling a sense of gratitude really at life, that we had gone through this very rough period in his transition, and that he was finally feeling better. And so I'd never really told anyone the story from start to finish, and the process of bearing witness to Daniel in that way, like it was therapeutic, but also like we built trust right away. And he had a friend that was there in the apartment at the time. And so he's very aware, as a white man, of being Caucasian, of class. Like I picked up on it right away, but it was very, it was helpful that he had this friend that he had for many years that went, he's good people. And so that person, vouching for him, and John saying, I know this person, that's part of what made me feel comfortable and safe, that relationship with John. And just honestly, my own interaction with Daniel and the energy, like you can feel his spirit electronically, like you could feel it through Skype. There was a genuineness. Like if he were there with me, I could feel him hugging me through the tears as I was describing really painful stuff, and so really, Daniel, like that, like I'm touching my heart to say, it just really moved me. So that was why I said yes. And it wasn't just my story to tell. It was also Elliott's story. It was Harold's story. And Elliott's sort of in the middle, literally in the film, and also in personality of the two of us. So I'm somewhat more of the extrovert and the outgoing person, and the person that always is trying to make the world a better place. I drag Elliott, with me to things. And then we both sometimes will drag Harold in, and Harold is quiet and somewhat more introverted, and Elliott's a bit of an ambivert. So I didn't know what they would say. And I said, you know what, guys, we just went through some really tough stuff. Here I am in the middle of divorcing, my husband, right? And he didn't have to say yes or do any of that. And so I think there were just so many moments of grace around that and bravery. And I want to acknowledge that from the two of them too, to say, because it really needed for all of us to say yes at the same time. And during the journey of the transition, it was not like that. Elliott knew where he was. I came along sort of first, through struggles. He wanted to bonk me on the head at times, and then his dad at the end. But we, again, same thing, like we came to it together.
So we're getting questions on, I'm going to jump a little bit and come back to you, but we're getting questions on Facebook about where you can see the film. So Dan, if you can just address that right now, and we'll come back to it at the end as well. But don't want to leave our Facebook friend, the people who are watching on Facebook, don't want to leave them hanging.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had planned a theatrical release for the film. It premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival last year. Then we had about a year of festivals, and the plan was to be in theaters now. There's something called COVID-19 that stopped all of that. So as we looked at how we wanted to get the film out in the world, we're pretty clear that we didn't want to wait any longer. We discovered that there's this great new thing where all these independent film theaters, all these art houses around the country that would have been the ones to play our film, that play all the best documentaries and, to me, all the best movies, they were all closed, like the big chains, but probably hurting even more because they didn't have all this corporate money behind them. And many of them have opened these virtual cinema platforms, which means that you can go to the website of one of these independent films, the Angelica in New York, for example, and
Enzian in Central Florida.
Right, and the Enzian, I'm sorry, yeah, especially the Enzian. And you can see new movies through that platform, and when you watch the movie through them, they get half the ticket price, which I love. We could have just gone to Amazon Prime and iTunes and maybe even Netflix and have them get all the money. But this way, by watching the film, you can also support your favorite theater if we're on their platform. So this is how you watch it. Go to fortheyknow.org, our website. For They Know, first 3 words in the title, fortheyknow.org. Click on Find Your Theater, and then there's a list of 70 plus independent theaters all over the country. Pick the theater you want to support and just click on it. And that's where you'll rent your movie. It's a rental just like on Amazon or Netflix. It's for 72 hours. And for the $10 ticket fee, half of that will go back to the theater that you'd like to support. So we're hoping a lot of people support these theaters because we want them to be able to reopen when that finally is possible.
Yeah, and they really need that support. So that's really terrific. So let's get back to Coleen. I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about, tell us a little bit about Elliott and how he's doing.
Sure. So Elliott's doing great. He's about to turn 20. So he'll be leaving the teens. It's hard to believe as his mom. And, you know, it's been quite a journey. We still have conversations, you know, like it so happens last night, we were sitting down and he was reminding me of where we were and, you know, how we got to different places. And he said, you know, Mom, he said, you know why we still have a good relationship? It's because, you know, well, you're open and you know, and you were there with me, like you made me go to therapy with Dad because he and I needed it more than you did. But we, you know, we can talk. He's your typical sort of college student. It's been rough, COVID-19, you know, I mean, he's much more of a social being now that he is in his own skin. He is being the man that he wants to be and is. And so it's very difficult being isolated from everyone and like his social network, also his peer support. And also, let's face it, college was never meant to be online. It was meant to be on a campus and be with your friends. And as much as he loves me, his mom, or, you know, and his dad, he would much rather be with them. So I'm sort of bummed out for him, but, you know, happy that we're all healthy and grateful. And he's fierce. He's on fire, you know, about everything that's going on. Like he's, you know, he's this Black trans man, right? So like talk about intersectionality. And so all the issues that come up, we've been talking about that. He's not separate from that. And I just find like in terms of allyship, like I've always found that the LGBT community has really been out there on a lot of these issues. You know, everybody has different experiences. And I really, really see that now with this generation. They're just doing some incredible things in terms of the way they think about the world, just how much more ready they are to accept people at face value, like how they understand things like gender, sexuality, and also race and class. They're really sharp, and I'm hopeful for the future. And so I'm glad that he's going to be you know, he's moving on and going to be doing great things with his peers, because we need that in this country. We need that in this world right now.
So Dan, do you want to talk a little bit more about some of the other people who are featured in the film?
Sure. Let's see, who haven't I talked about? Well, separate from the families, there are a number of clergy in the film. 2 people that I think are just extraordinary. Pastor Delman Coates, who runs a Baptist church outside of Baltimore, who's just really, I don't know, I just find him very powerful in the film. And then one of my favorite clergy people in the world, Jackie Lewis, Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis, who is the senior minister at Middle Collegiate in New York. She has, and she's really been very much at the forefront of a lot of the conversations that are happening right now in the US around race and anti-racism, especially, and anti-Blackness. She, for me, kind of pulls every sort of key point in the movie. She pulls it together and kind of puts a period on it. So if you do not know who Jackie Lewis is, Google her and watch her sermons and watch who she is in the world, because I think she's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, she absolutely is. And also another interesting person in the film is Randy Thomas, who addresses the issue of conversion therapy in a really incredible way.
Yeah, Randy was a senior executive at the biggest conversion therapy organization in the world called Exodus International. But he was also ultimately one of the executives that led to its shutdown. And he has experienced an amazing transformation. I find him extremely courageous to be very clear about what he did and what he thought. He has lots of regret for that, but he's so making up for it now, to me, by being so vocal and so incredibly powerfully affirming now. He also has allowed himself to come back out. He had come out as a gay man, and then he went back into the closet as an executive at Exodus, but now is out and proud and engaged. And I find him just to be very inspirational. To me, people always mention him who see the film. They mentioned how moved they are by his story. And he's an Orlando native, or not native, but he lives in Orlando now.
Right,
so yet another Orlando connection.
Yes, indeed. And I just saw on his Facebook page today, he's got his art online. He's made some masks that are on sale. So that was kind of interesting.
He's also started a great nonprofit called Thrive LGBT. That's all about helping people who have been victims of conversion therapy find their lives again and find their center again, which I think is super powerful. I mean, he's really putting it out in the world who he is now, and I respect that greatly.
Yeah. So the timing of releasing the film was geared towards Pride Month, which we're in the middle of right now. And, besides the COVID-19 pandemic and the fact that we've been shut down for the last 3 months, it also comes, as Coleen mentioned, the intersectionality. The film is coming out at a time when we're all, in whatever ways we can, whether it's in our own, in homes, if we're not safe to go outside because of health conditions or whatever, or out on the streets, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets around the country and around the world, calling for, Black Lives Matter, and such important work, which, as Coleen has described, Elliott is very much involved with, as is Coleen, as are we all. So it's fascinating, the timing, and I think hopefully it can bring people to recognize all these issues and come out to support not just this film. Dan, talk a little bit about Every 3 Seconds, which kind of, which came out a few years ago, but is about, there are so many issues that we are all passionate about. Every 3 Seconds was about alleviating extreme poverty around the world. So say just a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, just briefly, Every 3 Seconds was about the fact that every 3 seconds, someone somewhere dies of extreme hunger or in extreme poverty. Usually it's a child, and usually it's from a preventable disease. And that's one of those things that when I learned that, I just felt I couldn't not do something in my life to do something about that. So what I do is I make films. So I decided to make a film about that. I chose 5 different people from around the world, very different ages, a 7-year-old from London, like 20-year-old from the US, 35-year-old who was also from the US, but working in Congo. And then two seniors, one who was just an amazing woman, Gloria Henderson, who's a gleaner in her late 80s on the fields of farm fields of North Carolina, picking corn after the corn has been harvested to give to aged and homeless and poor, poverty-stricken people in that area because it's a food desert. And the fifth story was a Swiss woman in Kenya who started a microfinance bank and has really been responsible for helping about 1.5 million people in Nairobi climb themselves out of poverty. So it was about 5 people who didn't start to change the world. They just did something in their lives that they wanted to help the situation. And each time it grew and grew and grew. They just kept walking forward, however the universe was leading them. And each one of them has made a huge change, with the message being that each one of us has a blinding potential inside of us. We just have to believe it, find out what we really believe in, and strive to make change. So that's what Every 3 Seconds is about.
And the important thing is that it's really critically important that every one of us needs to do, whether it's a tiny little thing or something that changes, that grows into the kind of organizations that the subjects of Every 3 Seconds covers, that every one of us should actually be taking that step and doing something, whether it's, standing outside with a sign, saying Black Lives Matter when when your health is at risk and you don't want to go into a crowd. I have a lot of friends who are just standing outside their building with a sign as their personal, their personal protest or their personal act of support for everybody who is protesting and for change. So anyway, as we are getting, I think we've been on for half an hour, so I think gonna start to wrap up and ask Coleen if you have any final words for us.
No, just, I'm encouraging people to go and see the film, share it with others. I mean, the hope is that for families that may be either going through this or they may not know, you don't know what will happen, you don't know how your child will develop. This help gives you words, or maybe somebody, or you don't yet know if there's somebody, right, that that might be processing through this, transitioning through this, and you can be that supportive person. We know that it makes a huge difference. Every gay, lesbian, trans child just needs one person to hear them, care about them, mean something to them. And you might be that person and you might save a life. And so that for me was the most meaningful, is that this is what this is about, is how do we make the world a better place? It's an opportunity for all of us, and watching this film and learning is part of how you as audiences can make a difference. So thank you for doing that. And
thank you, Dan. Do you have any last words?
Just thank you to the Global Peace Film Festival. It's an amazing jewel in Orlando. I'm always impressed by everything that is accomplished by this amazing festival. I hope you guys can be live. I don't know if you know this yet, but I hope you can be live in September into October this year. And just to echo what Coleen said, if you're able to see the film and it's something that moves you, please talk about it to people. Please share it. Please spread the word. Movies like ours are really seen widely because of word of mouth. Nothing else works like word of mouth. So if you love it, please tell people. If you didn't, don't mention it.
And just one more time, that you can find the film at fortheyknow.org. There, go to see the film. You can either see the trailer or find a theater that you can go to. So that's on fortheyknow.org. Follow Dan and follow the Global Peace Film Festival. We do thank you, Dan, for the for the mention of the festival that's coming up from September 21st to October 4th. The first week will definitely be online. Actually, we'll definitely be doing a virtual festival, but we're hoping, we don't know yet what's going to happen by September, but we certainly hope that we'll be able to do at least some live events. And thank you for tuning in and watching this. And thank you, Dan. Thank you, Coleen. And thank you. And your support makes a great difference. And do something that you care about. And I hope you'll watch the film and share it with other people, share the information about it with other people so they can watch it.